humanity in our image and according to our likeness. And this let us, this is called a cohortative in Hebrew. It's a first person plural command, is a command to the other deities of the divine council, the deliberative body of gods that oversaw the functioning of the universe. And this is what the majority of scholars agree.
Yeah, again, he wants there to be multiple gods because he believes he's going to become a god. See, he's adding his theology. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how he he just like inputs his theology there? He wants you to believe these things. This is why I want people to know he's not a scholar, he's a liar. He's trying to convert you to think like a Mormon. Most scholars agree. Consensus does not mean anything to me. I want to know what the text actually says. And this is not a scholarly argument. This is horrible.
Is behind the scenes of this story. And then humanity is created male and female, and they're created at the same time. And this brings up the first big difference that I want to point out, and the main big difference. In Genesis chapter 2, God created humanity and then other things, and then recognized that the creation was not good. And then through trial and error, tried to resolve the problem. In Genesis chapter 1, with every creative act, mostly, God sees that it was good. And
he's just restating his position. There's no argument.
Humanity is created together, not one and then another created to fix things. Male and female are created at the same time. And this is probably one of the main reasons that this creation account exists, because the priestly authors wanted to have a creation account where everything was good from the very beginning, and God did not create something that was bad. But we have a bunch of differences here. We have multiple days of creation as opposed to one. We have humanity created last as the culmination of the creative act, rather than humanity created first. We have everything that is created being good as soon as it is created, rather than being
He's just restating the problem again. He's restating
bad
his position.
and needing a resolution. So we have a bunch of differences. So what's going on here? Well, scholars think that the priestly creation account, which again came later, was probably intended.
He's just restating his position again. You hear it? He's just restating his position over and over again. There's no evidence for it.
To supplant and replace and update and correct the earlier creation account, which the priestly authors and editors probably didn't like, probably weren't comfortable with God noting that their creation was not good. And so they decided to come up with a creation account that would resolve all these issues. And this creation account may have circulated independently initially, but at some point along the way, they were brought together. And we have these two accounts copied down consecutively on a manuscript. They didn't want to lose one, and so they decided to put them consecutively and just let other generations deal with results in problems, which results in intentional mistranslation. So for instance, in Genesis 2:19, where it says God formed the animals out of the ground in order to try to find a suitable companion for Adam, in the NIV and the ESV it says, now the Lord God had formed the animals out of the ground. In other words, it interprets it as a pluperfect, and it's not a pluperfect. This is not how pluperfects are formed in Hebrew, but because the translators of these two versions of the Bible are committed to biblical inerrancy, which means the two creation accounts can't conflict with each other, they are required to massage the translation so that it can plausibly.
He's talking about in Genesis 2 when it says that God brought the animals that he had formed from the ground. That's what it says, that he brought him the animals that had been formed from the ground. Because he placed them in a garden. So he brought the animals to him to name them. And he's saying that means that he created the animals after Adam. It says, again, this is not a scholarly argument. He's even arguing against other scholars that disagree with him, saying their translation is not a good translation because it disagrees with my translation. Genesis 2, when it says he brought him the animals that he had formed from the ground, that's what he did. So this is not an argument. Again, this is probably his strongest argument, and it's not a good argument. But he says that it's irreconcilable. It's just ridiculous. This whole video has been a complete waste of time.
Be interpreted as a single unified and consistent narrative. So they have to use the pluperfect there. And then they get scholars to try to gin up arguments for why it's legitimate to use the pluperfect there. And it's just not. And so if you want to take the Bible seriously, you need to take seriously the fact that we're dealing with two different creation accounts at the beginning of Genesis. One was probably written in the pre-exilic period. It is more anthropomorphic. It's more corporeal. You have God making noise as they walk through the Garden of Eden. You have a God that creates by manipulating materials with their hands. And then you have the later priestly creation account that reverses the focus. It's not earth and heavens, it's heavens and earth. And you start with separating light from dark and then focus in.
Again, none of this is scholarly. This is all an emotional argument because of his interpretation.
On the culminating creation of humanity, and everything is good right from the beginning. And keeping these two accounts separate is how you take seriously the biblical text. Combining them, forcing them to agree with each other, that's imposing a unifying framework on the two of them so that both of their voices are muted, and you are compelled to create a new third interpretation of what's going on here. And so that's not taking the Bible seriously. That's taking the dogma of univocality and inerrancy and inspiration seriously, and putting the Bible second while also leveraging the authority of the Bible. And that is pure and utter nonsense. And the fifth for this video.
So that's the whole video. There were two scholarly arguments in this video. Okay, let's talk about them. One of the arguments that he put forward that is actually worth referencing is the lack of the definite article. If he was a scholar, he would know that in Hebrew, this is true, you don't always need the definite article there. Sometimes the context will give you the definite article, essentially. will serve. You don't have to have the definite article there to make that the same creation account or the same creation. He's saying because it lacks the definite article, that means, well, it's a different account. That's the ridiculous. It is a lie. It is deception to say that. Any Hebrew scholar that I know of would disagree with. Are there Hebrew scholars that would agree with that? That you must have the definite article because that determines the context of the sentence. If there's no definite article, then it just can't be. It's just no Hebrew scholar would agree with that because I've taken Hebrew. So that's the end of the video. This guy. There's two arguments here that he made. The lack of the definite article in Genesis 1 or Genesis 2, that means nothing. Any Hebrew scholar worth his salt will tell you it means nothing, that it doesn't need to have the definite article. It's a horrible argument. And the other argument was Genesis 2, he brought him the animals that he had formed from the ground. Hey, I got news for you. Even if he forms the animals right before he brings it to Adam in the garden, maybe he just formed new animals then, just to bring those certain animals to Adam. Maybe it was just a creation of extra animals at that point. That doesn't mean that's a horrible argument. It doesn't stand. So your two pseudo-scholarly arguments are horrible arguments and don't stand. And it's true. What I'm saying is true. You can't refute what I'm saying. He can't refute what I'm saying. He knows he can't. He says stupid things the whole time, wastes 15 minutes of our life giving emotional arguments, and then calls himself a scholar. So I'm not wasting my time anymore on Dan McClellan's videos.